Welcome to episode 1 of the In the Name of Service podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Barb Thompson. Here, we broadcast the stories of men and women who've answered the call to serve in hopes of inspiring and catalyzing the rest of us to follow suit in our own way. Today's interview is with Jared Thompson. Jared is a retired Special Forces officer, or Green Beret, with multiple deployments to the Middle East as well as East Asia. Since his retirement, he has earned his private pilot's license and volunteered for a short-term mission to Kenya with Africa Inland Mission and served as a general contractor for the family home he's built in Virginia on 30 acres. He's married and has 5 children ranging from 3 years old to 20. You'll want to check out the show notes later after this interview. I've included some definitions of some of the acronyms that Jared mentions, like FTX, ROTC, ODA, Infil, Exfil, 04, 05. Some of those things that if you aren't in the service may be unfamiliar to you. Don't worry, I'll define those for you. You'll also find links to things that will give you more information about the things that Jared mentions, like Special Operations Command, MACV-SOG, which is kind of Vietnam era unconventional warfare that includes high risk, low oversight, ambiguous environments, going in with small teams. One of the things that inspired him. So I will list those links in the show notes. But for now, let's take a listen. Okay. So we're here today with Jared Thompson, who just happens to be my favorite person on the earth. So no pressure there. Jared, tell us a little bit about yourself, just so we know some of your background and where you're coming from.
Okay, my name is Jared Thompson. I guess as it pertains to this conversation, I am retired somewhat recently from the Army, retired about 2 years ago. Served for 21 years, active duty. Most of that was in special operations. Started out in infantry, and then I had some National Guard time as well while I was in college. But yeah, like I said, retired a couple years ago. Not sure what I'm doing now other than around the house projects and just learning new skills and chasing the kids around. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Do you remember what originally led you to serve in the Army?
Not specifically. I think, as a young kid, I like running around outside and playing soldier. I was always drawn to the trade or profession of being a soldier. So I guess I always made the assumption that at some point I would go into the Army to do something. I guess the older I got, the more I read and understood what sacrifices previous generations have made. It kind of solidified in my mind that yes, I would, go into the Army or go into the service, go into the military at some point to do my time, whatever that meant at the time, because we didn't have this is all pre 9/11, so we didn't have a war looming, but I still felt like checking that box is something that like I was definitely going to do. I don't know why. I didn't have a long family history of anybody that served or anything like that. I did have a grandfather that served, but he didn't seem to have enjoyed it, so it wasn't something he romanticized for me growing up. But I don't know. I guess I just running around with guns and playing war was something I was drawn to, and the next logical step as I matured was to kind of put that into action.
Do you remember what kinds of things you read or the types of information you found as you grew up that kept you interested?
Yeah, I think a lot in middle school I read a lot of Vietnam era stuff, a lot of light infantry type stuff, a lot of MACV-SOG, like the indigenous advisors, like the predecessors to some of the units I ended up working with.
Did you find it on your own, or?
I think so. I don't know. I don't know how I was really introduced to any of it. This is the time of Rambo and Delta Force and all these
Yeah.
Navy SEALs, all these different movies that, just have guys doing unrealistic kind of things with in combat. So I can't really say where. I mean, I think that was just kind of the culture at the time of, early 80s, mid 80s, A-team, things of that nature. So I don't know.
Yeah. Do you remember the feeling? I mean, knowing you were drawn to doing hard things, it sounds like, or challenging things.
Yeah.
Do you remember a feeling behind that?
Yeah. I don't know, a different feeling, but I think there was a tendency for me to do things that I knew that not everybody could do or wanted to do.
Yeah.
Athletically, different sports or just different challenges or just different, weird things. And that's probably pretty common of, young men growing up. But yeah, that even, that especially after I got to the point where I had to select a branch and, go into the military, I wanted to do something that wasn't just like, I'm doing my time. Yeah. Like I want to do something that other people would not want to do. So like I remember some really tough FTXs in ROTC where like the weather would be bad and we'd been awake for a long time or been hungry or whatever. And the instructors would be like, who still wants to be infantry? And like it would inevitably be me and one other guy that we always kind of hung out. We're like, yes, we still want to be infantry officers. So I don't know, that's kind of jumping ahead, but yeah, things like that have probably always been the case for me.
And as you went along pursuing this type of service that you felt drawn to, what are some of the things that you gave up just in that pursuit?
I don't feel like I gave up a lot. So in college, I majored in civil engineering, and that was pretty challenging. And looking back, that was probably unnecessarily like an unnecessary obstacle to put myself through because I guess at the time I was thinking, again, this is pre 9/11. I was thinking, well, maybe I'll go into the Corps of Engineers. Maybe I don't know, be some type of civil engineer in the service and kind of get credit for that experience and then get out after 3 or 4 years and then get my engineer's license and just go be a normal person and be a professional and make money. So that was always kind of bouncing around the back of my head. And so I worked pretty hard to complete that degree along with, all the military kind of training and prerequisites we were being put through. But then, 9/11 kind of changed my mind on everything. So I ended up just staying in the military and making a career out of that. And then nearing retirement, I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll go, what else do I know how to do as I'm looking back? Well, I don't remember how to be an engineer anymore. That ship has sailed. So I feel like sometimes I kind of gave that up. Mm-hmm. A different, more comfortable life or a life where I might have been good at a different thing. But if I'd have done that other thing, I probably would have regretted, leaving service at what I felt to be a critical time.
Mm-hmm. And even what made you pursue special operations, past the point? So you've grown up kind of drawn to this infantry type of career field. Well, then you made that. And what made you feel like that you needed to do more?
Yeah. Yeah, I've always liked working on smaller teams. So an infantry platoon was fine. That was great. I think at the coming right out of college or coming out of the basic course and ranger school and all that stuff, being an infantry platoon leader was like the right job because that's all you've been doing. So you kind of understood the job, the tactics of it and how to be what I thought was a leader, but really you're just more of a you're being more directive than you were being a leader. But you're working with a different kind of mindset of individual, and you're asked to do the missions you are being asked to do are different as well. So what I found myself drawn to more and more was like working with just fewer people that I knew I could really trust, that were a higher caliber, that were capable of doing more than that. So I didn't really consider, I mean, in college and all that, I didn't think I was going to be doing anything more than just, the 3 or 4 years that I was obligated to do. But once I became more serious about, like, hey, I'm gonna stay in the military, I'm gonna, serve as to whatever degree I can, it became apparent that I was gonna go try to do something else with a more selective organization. So considered Ranger Regiment. Unfortunately, I was part of a branch detailed program that the Army called it. So post my infantry lieutenant time, I was required to go to a transition course to be an ordnance officer. So essentially the Army had determined that my future in the Army would be as a combat service support, so working in motor pools or whatever that means. And yeah, I couldn't really see myself doing that. It's just different cultures. It's all an essential function and an important part of the Army or any organization as a whole. But I just culturally and I just couldn't see myself being excited about that role. So got a selection date, and I actually had a selection date pre 9/11, so I was already on track to do that. Before the attack on our homeland. I didn't get to, that date didn't occur until after the fact, but all the paperwork was already approved, and I was kind of just waiting on my date. And that really did. I enjoyed selection. It was primarily individual at the time, so I had a great time just walking around the woods with a backpack. There were some team events, but again, that kind of solidified for me, like, man, there's people here for the wrong reasons, and then there's people here that think exactly like I do, and it's going to be great to work with them on some important missions in the future. So that was kind of a big eye-opener for me. And yeah, that just continued to be the case going forward through training.
I want to move towards your most kind of meaningful period of, or at least what you would consider your most meaningful period of service right now, whether it was a certain event or a certain mission or just a specific team. But before then, could you talk a little bit about the people there for the wrong reasons versus the same mindset as you, and just walk that dog a little bit? So if people are wanting to serve, what are some of the the wrong reasons for trying to do hard things?
Yeah, and there's people that I would consider have the wrong motivations that make it through a selection, that make it through training, that make it to a team. That they're high caliber individuals. They're they're successful in all they do, and essentially always will be. But what I saw to be the difference, I guess, is just kind of a self-centeredness. Like, it was a stepping stone. It was a patch for them. It was a badge. It was a beret, whatever you want to call it. They're more interested in telling people that they were special forces, or that whatever the case may be, than it was just shutting up and doing the job, taking initiative to find ways that they could contribute to some type of operational gap, or just contribute to the mission. Because the good guys I worked with, the good teams I was on, they were just kind of self-organizing. It wasn't me telling people what to do all day long, and it wasn't me or the senior enlisted the guy on the team. It wasn't him. There was times where we had individuals in the team where we'd have to shepherd along a little bit more, but the good guys and the good teams, everybody just kind of gave in together, gave way together, and I hesitate to say self-organizing because this is kind of beat in our brains to kind of operate in a certain way during the qualification course, and that culture carries on. Once you're at your groups and teams and everything, so it's not an anomaly, I don't think. But you see guys that are kind of in it for themselves, who are trying to track along and get in certain schools or certain missions or go on certain deployments, and it's not that it doesn't work out for them, but they probably don't stick around on good teams very long. They probably get passed around. If as a team guy, as an officer, those guys exist as well. And again, it probably just comes down to a self-centeredness, a pridefulness, or an ego that is more, their efforts are more tied to self-promotion than it is
the mission.
Yeah, more than that than the mission. So I don't know. It takes all types. Some of those guys don't make it, past the second day selection, and some of those guys end up in command of the very organizations that I'm talking about. So, yeah, but they're not necessarily the individuals I'd like to serve with.
Yeah. So, can you tell me about a time when you felt that you were in a position or in a role or on a team or on a mission where your kind of childhood dreams or expectations of serving came to fruition, or you felt like you were really in the moment you had been searching for?
Yeah, definitely on ODA. Like I said, as a rifle platoon leader, you've been kind of trained and going through those reps for years at that point. So, all that normal ambush raid recon, battle drills, and react to contact type stuff that you've been training on is somewhat second nature. It just feels like you're just continuing on year after year. But on an ODA, you're pitched all kinds of different problem sets, and I've always loved mission planning. I loved planning things from the beginning. So from infil to execution to exfil, I was always kind of drawn to the details of whatever it was, and that wasn't necessarily always my job. I just enjoyed it. So I enjoyed my time on an ODA, and just all the just different weird kind of missions we went on, and the targets we had to prosecute, and just the different curveballs and opportunities we were given to kind of step up and just help out our partner units, or help out some of the other coalition forces, or to just, I don't know, do what we were trained to do. But again, that was very tactical level. Your time on an operational detachment as an officer is fleeting. I got a little more time than most, just because of the way things shook out between deployments and everything. So I was happy to get a couple of good turns under my belt with a team, and then another team. But again, I didn't feel like I was leading or serving. I felt like I was just having fun, and I was doing what I was trained to do, and I just loved serving with the guys that were around me. I knew their families very well. I felt obligated to them as well, just to make sure that I was training them the best way as possible, and I was doing my job well, in order to ensure that their husbands and fathers came home safely. But then, at that next 04, 05 level, you're not down in the weeds. You're not necessarily in the trucks hitting targets and just doing all the stuff that drew you to that life in the first place. And then you look and you're like, well, I still have half my career left. What's going on now? What do I do? And that's the point. A lot of guys just kind of go find something else to do. And I'm kind of in that transition point now, but I decided to kind of fill out those next 10 or 11 years. But then you just kind of determine, like, yeah, you still have to serve. You're still being a leader isn't all being directive, and it's not going to be fun necessarily. You still owe quite a bit to the men that are out there conducting that mission, whether it be just removing obstacles or developing relationships that allows them to get out the door, or making sure they got the best training or the best equipment, or taking care of their families, whatever the case may be. It's just sacrificing in a different way. So I found satisfaction in that as well. But it's something it's not that I didn't realize it. I just didn't see myself in that position until I was in that position. So.
Right. What have the sacrifices looked like in your own life for the service that you've had?
I'd say more than anything, just time away from my family. So I think, and you don't notice it much when you're the guy out there doing it, but you miss a lot of life, I guess. Just a lot of weeks, months, and years, just physically apart from the people that you love and care about, and say that you're indirectly supporting. So the thing is just coming back, and just it kind of slaps you in the face at some point that you don't remember certain things, or you can miss certain periods of life, or you can't take part in all the stories that everybody was telling because you were on the other side of the world, or at a training event, or whatever the case may be. So it doesn't seem like a sacrifice when you're young, or when you're single, and everything else, but as life develops, but you're still kind of walking that walk, that at some point it's a sacrifice for your family, and for you.
Was there any point in time when you thought it was a mistake or a poor investment of your time?
No, not necessarily. I mean, there have been frustrating times, just watching the news and watching how things unfold, and watching how organizations that you've contributed to so much kind of evolve out of what they're best at. But you can't. So success, I guess, was more so just keeping the fight from our doorstep. So all I can really say is, like, on my watch, I can feel good about the time that I spent with my brothers downrange, just making sure that what we were doing contributed to the safety and security of our families and our homeland. Now, it's been difficult, recent years, just kind of watching how things have unfolded in Afghanistan, Iraq, other parts of the world. But I would never regret, like, the time that I spent, or the sacrifices I made during the years that I was serving. So no.
And how do you see? Well, now you've transitioned out of the Army, but it's clear you have a heart to serve and to do difficult things and do things that other people maybe don't want to or aren't willing to. And what does it look like now, kind of internally, without having a specific mission to go after?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still wrestling with that, and figuring out what a good fit would be. You get so much advice, like, as you're transitioning or retiring or whatever, and most of it's just like, go do whatever you want to do.
Whatever you're passionate about.
Yeah, and I hate that word. I hate people telling me to do what I'm passionate about. Because there's a lot of things I'm interested in. There's probably things I'm better at than others, but I don't feel like I need to leave a huge mark or have my name known or anything like that, but you want to find a purpose, some type of, it doesn't have to be an organization, but somewhere to align your efforts and your values with, so you feel like you're doing positive things with your time and resources, and setting a good example for your kids and everything else, and ideally earning a living while you're doing it. But yeah, I'm not sure what that's looking like. I'm just enjoying the time, learning some construction skills and spending time with my spouse, and that's it.
Thank you.
Something will work out.
Yeah. You've been in all kinds of roles throughout your, military career, and even, you volunteer at the church and different things. What advice do you have for other people who kind of feel that call that you felt as a child, like you just want to do something more, you're willing to do something more, so they want to serve, but they don't really know how to start?
Yeah, and there's probably not a perfect entry point for any one individual. Becoming involved in the church was something that I did early and often, I guess, as a kid, just doing whatever they needed to do around the church. That was usually something to do with maintaining the grounds, but I would say you don't need permission. You don't need a particular skill set. You don't have to be employed by some global nonprofit in order to be a servant. You don't have to go to seminary to be a servant. You just have to recognize where there's a need, and be willing to address it. And that could look a number of different ways. There's probably more need around us than we would like to recognize. So again, it really just comes down to kind of putting your ego aside and doing some work that's probably not glamorous or probably not fun, and probably not doing it for the purpose of recognition or for being given another opportunity to do something else you would rather do. So as much as it sucks, you kind of just got to get over yourself and do things that you recognize need to be done that probably aren't going to get done, and just doing it, not talking about it, not asking for permission, but just addressing needs. And if your motives are right and the Lord wills it, then you will have other opportunities. But that's about it. That and your environment, I would say, like you need to surround yourself with people that are trying to do a little bit more. Whether that's a workout partner or a study partner or just a business colleague, someone who strives to be excellent at whatever they do. So that will always bring out the best in an individual who are to your left and right. So just that kind of iron sharpens iron type of concept, I would say. And it doesn't have to be in the vein of service. It could just be, it could be entrepreneurship or whatever the case may be. But if you're around people that are try to be their very best, you're going to get better at identifying opportunities where you can be your best as well. That, and for people who are not married, I would say that selecting the right spouse, for the long term, that's going to kind of set you up for success as far as like the path you're going to go and what opportunities or adventures you're going to pursue together. For so many reasons, I've seen guys who were pulled in all types of different directions just because them and their spouse weren't on the kind of the same worldview or didn't have the same values, and it was really kind of tough to watch. But it doesn't mean they can't kind of grow together in a similar direction. But it's a lot easier if you start out married to someone who has, again, the same values is willing to understand what you want to do as far as serving and sacrificing, and can support you in doing that, and vice versa.
I like those 3 tips. Yeah, it's funny because, sometimes when you were gone, I would have people comment, oh, I'm so sorry, he's gone. And it's like, I would have a very strong reaction to that internally, not externally, of course, because they're trying to be nice. But it was definitely a matter of pride for me because, the way that I could serve the world is by essentially sacrificing you. It sounds bad, but I knew, and know what you're capable of. And I'm always happy to see you go off and do things that other people aren't able to do or aren't willing to do. And even after you got out, you took a trip to Kenya. Like another thing that, just another way that you raised your hand and did something challenging. He learned to fly before that, by the way, but it's been an exciting ride. So thank you for all you've done and all you do. And any parting thoughts before we end our conversation today?
No, I'm sure I'll think of all kinds of smart things to say once you hit stop.
Yeah,
but,
that's the way it works.
No, that's it. Thank you.